Hello, experts. Welcome to the RoK Diagnostics podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything medical laboratory science. In today's episode, we sit down with a medical laboratory scientist, Rebecca Itunu Olatunji, and we're going to be talking about management of waste in the laboratory. So, how are you doing today, Rebecca?
I'm okay. I'm doing great. Thank you so much, sir. It's an
Thanks a
honor
lot.
having me on this platform.
Thanks a lot for being here with us today and for taking the time out of your day to come and discuss with us. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into medical waste.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam. Once again, my name is Olatunji Rebecca. I'm a medical laboratory scientist and also project manager for Temi HS Design and Branding Company. And I'm a public health enthusiast and also into event planning. So that's what usually I do.
So, how did you get into medical laboratory science? What was the path? What's pushed you to this field?
Oh, I remember. Okay, I was opportune to be mentored by my own senior brother. He's a medical
All right.
laboratory scientist. I remember he coming home and he was like, Itunu, what do you want to go and study in the university? I said, oh, I would have loved to go for medicine. And he was like, why do you say you would have loved? What was the constraint? I said, I don't really like the sight of seeing wounds, all sorts of accidents. And he was like, then why not give medical lab science a try since you really want to work in a new hospital environment? And at the same time, you want to avoid seeing those serious things that happen with patients, like when it comes to wounds and the like. So that was what propelled my passion for medical laboratory science. But along the way, I get to enjoy it. I see more
Yeah.
future in it. Like if I'm given a second chance to take another course, I would choose medical laboratory science over and over again.
Pretty good. So you had an influence in the house, someone that pushed you towards that field.
Exactly.
All right, that's nice. It's a good thing to have at least, because the good thing is he was already part of the field. So I'm sure he was able to help you and then direct you and then tell you do this, don't do that, and things would have been a lot smoother than some of us that just stumbled into it and then had to figure out our way all the way through.
Oh, oh yeah, that's true.
And tell me, medical waste, laboratory waste, why is it a subject that you're interested in?
Looking at Nigeria practice, you will see, although we have a regulatory body whereby professionals are meant to work only in the laboratory, but looking at the country here, we tend to have both professional and non-professional in quotes. And there are times, maybe by the time you are working in the laboratory, people in the phlebotomy, you think like, why are you discarding that needle inside the waste bin? It's supposed to be in the shafts. And you'd be like, do you know you are posing a great risk for the laboratory attendants, like people who disposes waste? Like you are putting them in quite an unpalatable condition. And even we ourselves, as a medical laboratory scientists, sometimes we just work the way we do the bench, the way we dispose the waste. I feel like, why are you doing that? What happens to your other colleagues that come to work? Maybe, for example, you're on the night shift, and what happens to your other colleagues that come in? They don't know what have happened, and mistakenly, you are posting them to a threat. So that's really one of the major criteria while I find laboratory waste management an interesting one for me that I would love to discuss about during the course
Yeah.
of the stack.
So is it the issue? Is it mainly that they don't have the information, they don't have the knowledge? Is it that the knowledge is not deep enough? Is it just not wanting to put the extra effort? What's the reason why the waste is not necessarily treated the way it's supposed to?
Well, for me, I won't say because they don't have a deep information. I'll say negligence. Like there's this casual way of saying laboratory waste as nothing serious, and we don't tend to know the aftermath effects of what happens when you dispose your waste in an appropriate format. So let me say for us, it's majorly negligence. Like we don't care the aftermath effects. We don't want to know. Yeah, so
And
that's just me really what I can say about that.
are there some people you see around you that do still follow the rules, or is it that most everyone doesn't? At one stage, because at one point you may have people who are trying to follow the rules, but maybe they don't have all the, let's say, the waste bin, something as simple as like different waste bins labeled for in order to be able to contain different kinds of materials. Is that something that's usually made available that they try to put in place, or it's just a situation where you have one kind of bin and that's it?
Okay, no, we don't have, oh, for the working environment I am currently, we don't have just a bin for that. Obviously, we have the shafts, which is basically the shafts and the dustbin, which is basically the normal thing here. But I'll say administratively also, the way we tend to look at disposal of laboratory waste, we take it with a light hand.
Yeah.
Like you feel like, well, it's just to dispose something. It's not cutting anything out of it. Trying to look at the aftermath effect, those clearing it out. Even your other colleagues who are not aware, you tend to like the danger afterwards. Maybe if, for example, you are, let me say, if, for example, now you had a laceration in your hand due to improper disposal waste, maybe we will tend to take waste disposal more serious, or maybe in a situation whereby, for example, you work in histopathology, inhaling all these chemicals like formalin, usual exposure, constant exposure to heat, xylene, and the like. And we know one way or the other is cancerous, but it doesn't come once, it's a gradual effect. Maybe, for example, if we have a relative or a colleague who came down due to that kind of exposure, we tend to know how serious waste management can be. So that's just it. If administratively we take it serious as much as the way we preserve reagents, the way we conduct laboratory tests, like we put in more how do I call it now? More strict hands on it. I think it will go a long way to help, not even helping just the people working in the laboratory, even the environment, to avoid lesser pollution. Imagine having a shaft inside a leather nylon, and maybe where it was dumped, because the person that dumped it never had the idea that there was a sharp in it. One way or the other, somebody can just walk around and there you go, there's a cut. Probably the needle was from an infected patient. You know how those kind of transmission works. So I just feel strict management, like as much as we want a good productivity with what happens in the laboratory, like when it comes to results, we should also look into having that kind of having a kind of rules and regulation, making it strict on how we dispose our laboratory waste is quite important.
And how, according to you, would we go about, like, if you had to figure out a way to try and convince management to take it a lot more seriously, what would be some methods that we could try and use to convince people?
Okay, the very first thing is in the laboratory, let's have a safety officer, the person in charge. So I know laboratory waste disposal to some level might be quite expensive, but we can start with little things around us. Okay, fine. If we don't have a sharps, like a box for disposal of needles or glasswares as we have it, can create a box. It's not expensive. Like all these cartons around us, make sure you label it. This is for sharps. Okay, the one that are contagious, like that are wet, we put them through. Okay, if, for example, there is an alcohol spill, or we have a culture media that has already been cultured on with growth of bacteria in it, this is where it's supposed to be. So each boxes where different laboratory waste is meant to be disposed should be labeled, and also putting through like all laboratory personnel, putting them through. Okay, if you want to do this, or having even a small training. So I feel it's not something huge that even needs to involve the management, because obviously they have a whole lot they want to handle. It's something we can manage in the laboratory ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's one of the way I'm going to do that. So obviously the safety laboratory, the person in charge tends to see that this order is being taken. Everybody takes that step, and until it becomes part of us, part of the
Yeah.
normal operation in the laboratory, like a personnel controlling that's seeing to it. And once, okay, maybe they are out of maybe sharps or nylons or leak-proofed lead house, they can always get through to such personnel and like, oh, we are running out of this, we are running out of that, at least.
Yeah.
That will go a long way in helping out.
Yeah. I get the idea about having management take care of it, but the thing, I mean, not necessarily having management taking care of it, but as medical laboratory scientists, we, through our training, we all know the dangers involved with sharps. I mean, whenever we have to go and take blood from a patient, we know that we have to wear our gloves. We know that we need to protect ourselves. Now, if it's something that is not being done, maybe it's up to some of the medical laboratory scientists who believe it's supposed to be done to try and convince management to implement it. Because the thing is, as a medical laboratory scientist, yes, you can influence others around you, other colleagues, to do the work, but you may always, usually there's always, not always, but in many cases, you'll find someone on the team that doesn't necessarily want to do like everyone else, or that sees things, but at some point feels like it's the other people's jobs, or it's other people who should do it, that they don't, it's not necessarily part of their own job. So maybe also we should think of ways of having management step in to help those kinds of situations.
Okay. True.
Because if not, then we are just leaving it at random and then we never know exactly what's going to happen. But like you said, it's up to policies. So if there are policies in the place and the policies are in place, you know that if after your shift it's dirty, there's a certain penalty, then probably before people leave, they'll try and look around, clean things up before they leave, because it's extremely important for those that come in and work also after us.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But then
Exactly.
aside from what's being done in the laboratory, when, let's say, all these sharps have been produced, have been generated, once everything has been used, how is the disposal usually done?
Okay, once is put inside inside the shafts. Generally, is advised that it is being burnt in an incinerator. So that's the best way to go about that for what's it called now, for the shafts. We have the non-hazardous waste. Those are disposables like gloves that are not infected, pasture pipettes. Those are advised that we we bury them, and if possible, once it's not containing a flammable content, it can be burnt also. And for the ones that are infectious to the community, it's advised that you bury them. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to ask, in what part of Nigeria are you?
Oh, I'm in Ogun State.
Ah, all right. Now, in your area, when it comes to, how do I put it, when it comes to the actual disposal, is it up to the lab, or are there external companies that come and do the collection and take care of the incineration and anything else?
Yeah, for us here, what we do is we have the lab attendant. Those are people that see to how the waste disposal leaves the laboratory. Then they have a specific place that is being posted, and external body comes in and have that gone from the environment.
Yeah. So it's a company from outside that comes and then does the collection and then goes and disposes of the material. Is there any sort of follow-up of what they do, or is it or is it that you trust them?
Okay, for me, I'm just a worker. Like I don't I don't do the follow-up. I don't
Yeah.
really know much. But actually, the external body is not, it's more, yeah, what do I call it now? They still work under the administration of the company. Medical
Okay.
center is just an arm for us here.
So you're in public hospital,
No, private.
private. Okay, but then
Yes, that's it.
it's a branch of the hospital that takes care of.
Exactly.
Okay, I see.
Exactly.
All
All
right.
the,
I
because
think at
I
least,
know they don't do any money, they don't do any burying around us. We have people like, it's quite congested, but we don't have these cars that comes in to pick up those trash and they see to the disposal.
yeah. Okay. And when it comes to all the waste, according to you, what would be, let's say, at our levels, or you that are at your level in
All right.
your lab, what can be done to help with this problem?
Like I've said, setting up policy and let there be strict rules in how we do our proper disposal and just like you've advised, let's involve the management also to make sure that this policy it's quite it's being done by everybody.
And
So
are
that's
there governmental policies?
you said.
Are there governmental policies concerning waste in the country?
Yes, yeah.
So what are those recommendations like?
Okay, we have the Environmental Protection Agency, we have the Drug Enforcement Agency. All those agencies see to that. And if, for example, we notice things are not done the right way when it comes to laboratory management waste, we can get straight to them. They can always come around, know how all this policy works. They make sure everything is put in place, that there is proper laboratory waste disposal, working environment. So obviously, yeah, there are governmental policies.
And if there's any transgression, what's the effect? I remember, I think it was last year, no, somewhere at the beginning of this year, I was reading stories about issues that happened, for example, in India, where I think the government had sanctioned some laboratories because they had some medical waste, some laboratory waste that they had thrown in a body of water somewhere. So they were taken to court, and then they had payments of some, I remember, I think it was millions that they had to pay. And so there is some sort of follow-up at a certain level. It's true that they can't know everything bad that happens, but at least when things happen in that manner, you'll find that more labs try to follow the rules. Now, let's say there is a lab that's found to dispose of their wastes in a manner that is not appropriate. What would happen to them? What are some of the steps?
And just like you said, those policy, those governmental agencies ought to stand up for this, and it should be what even our bodies, MLSN, Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria, should look into, that we should take it up. You know, if, for example, MLSN is coming for accreditation, like to accredit either a laboratory or an hospital, like definitely that private or public, it should be one of the things that needs to be looked into. Because personally, maybe I'm having little information. I've not heard of cases like that happens in Indian with us here in Nigeria. It's more of once you're accredited, you are good to go. I've not heard of
Okay.
MNS closing down laboratories due to improper laboratory waste management. So
Yeah.
if all the strict policies are put in place, everybody does the normal thing.
But aside from this, have you ever heard about laboratories being closed for a reason or another? Is it something that you've ever heard of that has happened before?
Yes, yes, yes. But
Usually,
not based on laboratory waste management.
yeah. But usually, what are the reasons for closing labs?
I think, yeah, very first thing, when there is an inappropriate recording of laboratory results. So
Okay.
obviously, you know, one way or the other, it's not a professional that is handling that laboratory, and it occurs mainly in private laboratories when they are not really attached to an hospital. When we have the non-professionals holding the laboratory. And another thing is, yeah, that's just, let me say, that's just the major thing, just like it intertwined. when there is when there is an inappropriate release of results and when non-professional bodies are heading a laboratory. So that's the
Yeah.
major ones I do hear about. And yeah, another thing is expiration of license when it's not up to date. They close down
Okay,
such
I see.
laboratory.
Oh, so you have to, is it the license for the person that's in charge of the laboratory? Oh, I didn't know you had to renew your licenses in Nigeria. How often?
Yeah, we do that every year.
Oh, really? What's the process like? Actually, I've never heard about that.
Oh, really? It's nothing serious. Like your previous license is being sent to the council. That's the MLSCN, Medical Laboratory Science Council of
Council of
Nigeria, and
Nigeria.
you have your biodata updated online, and they do the renewal just every year. That's just it, every year for you to practice.
So actually, it's not a, but it's not too complex. It's just essentially that
No,
you
no,
are,
not at all. The
yeah,
the complexity is during the time you are leaving school when
yeah.
the council is going to give you your practicing license. You know, that involves all this documentation and the like. So once you've gone through that stage as a professional, you just do that with ease every year. So you send in the previous license, but now we've moved to this online thing. You don't need to do that. They already have the records of how
Yeah.
you've been renewing it every year. So you just make your payment and you have your license renewed.
Okay, I see. So
So
there's
that
some tracking being done. Yeah, okay.
yeah,
To
exactly,
know exactly who are those who are at any period of time licensed to actually work in the country. So I guess that's one of the ways where how they can track and then make sure that every laboratory is actually registered in the correct manner.
exactly.
Now, actually, going back to our topic, which is actually waste management. Let's say in a big hospital like yours, I'm assuming, I mean, in a larger hospital, I'm assuming, so that means the waste is produced in the laboratory, is produced in other parts of the other parts of the hospital, and everything is put together in order to get rid of it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
In a case where there are, let's say, holes, when I say holes in the process that is supposed to lead to putting all this waste together, is there usually someone in charge of following this? Like originally, you talked about the need for safety officers and having people who are present in order to do the follow-up. Are there usually people around? I mean, even if it's not someone who has had the specific training? Are there, let's say, laboratory scientists who are interested in the process who are assigned to try and follow the process and make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to happen?
As of now, I don't know of any.
All right. So maybe that would even be a nice place to start. I know some
Exactly.
people, but I think when you start proposing these kind of ideas, people complain because they say they already have too much work to do. But
Sure.
then the problem is if nobody does the work, because I think in the end it's always good for the hospital. I think actually,
Exactly.
I think if the argument can be made correctly, it's actually not too, it should not be too complex to convince, let's say, an administrator why it's important to have someone take care of that and actually follow the process, because it allows you, even in your advert, even while you're talking about the lab to people, it allows you to say, yes, you have someone that's in charge of that. It's already different from other places. So people probably feel a lot more safe coming to your laboratory, knowing that those are things you think about. Because usually before you get to that point and start thinking about those, I'll call it details, not really a detail, something we should do, but in our context, it can be considered a detail. But usually by the time you get to that point, it means you have fixed some of the other issues. So it gives those that come to your laboratory a lot more confidence that you actually know what you are doing, that you're actually advancing and you're moving
Exactly.
forward, you're going in the right direction. So I think it would be nice to
Exactly.
talk to people about that and try to convince maybe even even if it's some volunteers to try and help
Exactly.
with that particular aspect. Because in the end,
Yeah.
even for the volunteers themselves, it's good for their CV because it's something they could put on their CV later that they helped with that aspect in their laboratory. They did this, they did that. It's always a nice thing.
Exactly.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about the subject?
Is there anything really? Let me just say this, like for laboratory waste, our PPE can never be emphasized while working. It's very, very important. For us, yeah, hazard allowance it's just a
It does not exist.
the consequence, yeah, to your health. No, even if it does, like imagine using a needle from an infected HIV patient mistakenly. You have it, and even having to go through the rigor of taking your ART early enough, different kind of complaints, like what have you, just to prevent the presence of such disease, the stress, something you could have, if we have put a whole lot of things in place, you could have avoided so much stress and so much hazard to your health. There's nothing as beautiful as having a sound health, and it's much more sweet by the time when you get to know, okay, this is how best to even live an healthy life. Okay, let me just try and prevent this and prevent it for others too. Is as sweet as that. So I want to emphasize our PPE. It's very, very important. Personal protective equipment, very, very important while working. So that's just what I want to add to that.
Thanks a lot. So thanks a lot for taking the time to discuss with us today about this topic. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best place to do that?
So I'll say my LinkedIn for now.
All right, LinkedIn. Well, LinkedIn is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks a lot. So lab experts, you heard it. Take care of the waste in your laboratory. It's not just for the good of your patients. It's for your own good. It's for the health of your colleagues. It's even for the health of your families. You don't want to be in a situation where you are going home after having swiped your hands on your workbench and then not done your correct hand washing process, or going back with some bacteria on your clothes because someone neglected to clean things correctly in the laboratory. It's something you need to be aware of. It's something you need to try and help by, for example, volunteering to take care of monitoring that in your laboratory if it's possible. Thanks a lot, and hopefully we'll see you next time to talk more medical laboratory science. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.